It's time for part 3 of my answers to your questions. You can find parts 1 and 2 here. First, John asks, I love taking photos of stars in the universe. I have the Nikkor 18 to 55mm f3.5 to 5.6 and Nikkor 55 to 300 f4.5 to 5.6. How can I get good photos of the night sky and the universe with my lens? My best suggestion is to use either lens, whichever will fit the amount of sky that you want in the image. You'll need to set your camera manually and use a long exposure. Try 30 seconds to start out. You'll also need to increase your ISO sensitivity. The amount will depend upon your tolerance for noise in your image. And then focus on the moon, either manually or using autofocus. But if you use autofocus, switch over to manual after focusing so that your camera doesn't try to autofocus after you compose your image. So you then compose your image. And I suggest using mirror up mode to prevent camera shake, if your camera has that. And maybe even self-timer or interval timer so you don't shake the camera when you press the shutter release button. Then it's going to be a matter of adjusting your settings to get the image that you envision. You know, the last time I was actually at the Grand Canyon, I hiked out at night and stopped and turned off my headlamp just to enjoy the stars. And your question makes me want to get back out there and take some pictures. So I think I'll do that soon and share my experience with you all. Now for Neil. What would you recommend a newbie who wants to set up a cheapo photography studio for personal use? Thanks and keep up the good work. No, Neil, thank you for watching. Well, a camera is your first step. There's all sorts of options for that, and I kind of assume that you already have one of those, so let's move on to the other stuff like lighting and a backdrop. I have a video on the different lighting types, their benefits and their uses here. You can watch that video for more details, but one great way to start your studio is by using speed lights. They are relatively inexpensive, and you get double duty out of them. You can use them on camera and off camera, plus they're super portable if you need to take your show on the road. Then, for a backdrop, I particularly like seamless roll paper, but you can get by with a curtain or a sheet or even just the wall. Just remember to put a bit of distance between your makeshift backdrop and your subject so that you can blur out that background. Now from Samuel. Any tips on boudoir photography? Would you ever do a photo shoot collaboration with Chelsea Northrup? LOL. My best tip on boudoir photography: less is more. And that kind of goes for everything. Your photos can go contrived and just plain silly quickly. Sometimes just a t-shirt and panties plus simple makeup and hair, just playing around on the bed, is super sexy. Whereas black lingerie, red lipstick, and making the sexy face can be over the top. As for working with other photo bloggers, sure. Mark says, what would be a good price for an aspiring photographer for portraits? Wedding announcement, we're having a baby, etc. Would it be a fair trade to do free portfolio shots for a model with the understanding that you are still learning how to photograph? Price is dependent on your area. My best advice there is to check around to see what others are charging, where you do business, and then decide where in that range that you feel your services are worth for different jobs. And it's definitely okay to offer to trade photos for a model's time. They may or may not be interested, but there's no harm in asking. And a question from Chris. Do you have any experience with ITTL-capable radio flash controllers? I use my SB800 and 910 speedlights widely on slave, but on outdoor shootings, the range of the flash control got to its limits. The cheap radio control units are dumb, and the clever ITTL one's expensive. It would be interesting to get some first-hand opinions, especially about real-life range and reliability. Thanks. Also for your good work, Chris. If you need ultimate reliability, use a cable. With ITTL, the exposure is not going to be reliable as people move around the frame, so personally I don't like it. I use optical triggering inside and out, unless there are other flash photographers around, in which case I use a cable. Now, many of my viewers have great experience with radio triggers, but I don't use them. Rahan asks, can you prepare a table of ideal camera settings like shutter speed, ISO, aperture, flash, no flash, etc. versus common photographic situations and post on your page? That would be really helpful for all of the learners and would be good for us to use as a baseline. That's a tall order, Rahan, and pretty much impossible. There are far too many variables that change depending upon your environment, your subject, your camera, and your lighting. That being said, I do have a video with tips on how to set up your camera for landscape versus portrait photos. Now for Sean's question. Which speedlight would you recommend for a Canon 650D/T4i for shooting events in low lighting? That depends on how much you want to spend and how much light you really want. You're going to find the most power and flexibility in the top of the line, the 600EX RT. But stepping down a bit to the 430EX2 or the 320EX, you still get plenty of flexibility. Canon does have other speed lights, but you definitely lose flexibility quickly as you go on down the line. On to Ian's question. Will Sony make the medium format rangefinder with interchangeable leaf lenses with the ability to sync at 1600 shutter and sell it for $5,000? Ian, if I had a crystal ball, I would definitely tell you. Magic 8 Ball. Will Sony make the medium format rangefinder with interchangeable leaf lenses with the ability to sync at 1600 shutter and sell it for $5,000? Lily says, I have to shoot in low light with no flash at church. What can I do to get a crisp image that doesn't look so blurry or grainy? It might not be possible to get a super crisp image, but I do have some tips for you. Use a lens that can open up to a wider aperture. Using a wider aperture will do two things for you. One, it will allow you to increase your shutter speed to prevent motion blur or camera shake. And two, it will enable you to increase your ISO sensitivity a little less to prevent noise. Of course, you will often end up with noise in your image because you had to increase the ISO, but I'd rather get a shot with some noise than not get the shot at all. One of my favorite lenses to use in low light and to keep me the hell out of the way during a church wedding is my 70-200 f2.8. It's pretty pricey, but you can rent it or other lenses that have wider aperture capability, like maybe primes, at a place like lumoid.com. Barrett asks, do you think eventually the APS sensor will be phased out for the full frame? Love your website. Thanks, Barrett. I think you're asking if I think that cropped sensor cameras will go out of style. And I think, maybe? I feel like camera manufacturers are jamming more and more capability in smaller and smaller packages all the time. And the interest in full frame has definitely grown in past years, but alas, I don't have a crystal ball. Magic 8 Ball, will full frame take over the world? Zach, what's a good resource to help with posing people for someone new to portrait work? I answered a similar question in part 2 of this Q&A, but this question is different. In part 2, I answered how to pose models, but it seems more like Zach is talking about portraits. And I did post a video last week about posing people for headshots, and you can use some of the tips from that video for any portrait. Other than that, you can find books that will give you ideas, but the best tool that you have at your disposal is Google. You can do an image search for family portrait and come up with thousands of images. Then you can take the ideas that you like, put your own spin on them, and work them into your own repertoire of poses. Okay, guys, that was it. Thanks for all of your questions. And that's all for this Q&A, but I will be asking for more questions soon. Keep an eye out on my Facebook page. That's where I'll let you know when my next big Q&A is coming up. In the meantime, feel free to ask your questions on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, through email. I try to get back to everyone, but my VIPs will get my attention the quickest. I've got to keep you VIPs happy because you are the ones that keep this place afloat. So if you're curious about my VIP program, head over to my site. I'll put a link to the VIP information page in the description of this video.